getting the runs, not the runs. That sounds pretty diarrhea-ish, but people are.
Good morning, everybody. It is February 3rd, 2022. Yep, it's still 2022. This is the Squawk podcast where we break down everything Ravens. The AFC Championship game happened last weekend. The Cincinnati Bengals are basically just completing our worst nightmare in general, and they've moved on to the Super Bowl. And we said that it would be Patrick Mahomes, but we were so wrong about that. I'm joined by Chad, and we've got a special guest this week that I am very excited for. We have Taylor Wright joining us. How are you doing today, Taylor?
I'm doing great. Happy to be on the podcast today.
Tell the people all about you. So fan base, like who you root for, because I think people will be interested to hear about that. If you got any other podcasts or anything that you're doing on your end, we would love to hear about it before we get started.
So I guess first off, I don't know how well this will be liked, but I'm a Titans fan. So in my opinion, Ravens rival, but I'll be unbiased today. I also have a podcast I'm working on with my brother, Trevor Wright, and RJ Gill. We've been working on it for probably the last 2 years. We're just going to cover sports, focus on the NFL, and we are hoping to get it launched leading up to the NFL draft. So probably in a couple of months, we'll be, posting on YouTube, social media, and have it all up and running.
You're also a coach? You're a football coach?
Yeah, I coach going to be U12 football for Crofton and Anne Arundel County. We won the championship for our division last year.
Ooh.
So, yeah, good stuff. Main issue we're always fighting is trying to get enough kids to come out because parents don't want their kids playing football, but I disagree. I guess everyone has their own opinion.
Do you run into that a lot?
So this is my favorite story. My assistant coach, he's more, I guess, outgoing than I am. And if he sees a kid, like a big kid, like at I don't know, a grocery store nearby, he'll stop and be like, "Oh, hey, how old?" Or talking to the parents, like, "How old are you? Do you play football?" He ran into a kid, went up to his mom, was like, "Sorry to bother you. How old's your kid?" And she's like, "I don't know." He was like 11, 12. And he's like, "Does he play football?" And she's like, "Oh, I won't allow it. Football's too dangerous." And he was like, "Well, he's a big guy. He's obviously active. What does he do?" And she said, "He boxes."
What?
True story.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. That's an interesting thought there. I'm sure you don't get CTE from boxing at all, right? Like that's not a thing.
Right.
Wow. That's unbelievable. I'm surprised that you have trouble getting kids onto your team, considering the popularity of football.
Well, not to start any conspiracies, but Old Mill kind of steals all the players in the county. So
that makes sense.
I mean, they're good. They're a good organization, so I'm not hating on it. But limited players, and then everyone goes to the good teams. It just so happens that my area, Crofton, we only have like 4 teams altogether, and then some of the bigger orgs have like 3 teams in each age group.
Oh, dang! Wow.
Okay. Gotcha. I didn't realize. So there's So within Anne Arundel County, there's different divisions of U12 leagues?
There's usually 2. There's usually there's an A, B, and a C, but it depends. And then inside your organization, you can kind of say, I want this team to be in this division and so on and so forth. And the county has some say in it, like my team won the championship, so we have to move up to the next division. If you know your team's going to be really inexperienced, you can like appeal and be like, no, we want to drop down just for the kids. And one of our issues, like in Crofton, is we have a lot of kids who never played before, and then if they're getting destroyed every single game, they're not coming back. So,
right.
But is what it is.
Are there kids that like just by seeing them play, you're like, okay, they're going to move on to the next level? Are there kids that stand out like that at the age group that you're coaching?
Yeah, I believe so. So I guess I won't be throwing out names, but we were probably 3 weeks into our season before the game, like before games started. We're just, getting used to everything. We had a late registration. And I talked to his father, and we were like, okay, we're 3 weeks in. He's a little behind, but we're going to get him ready to go. Do our lap, start getting ready to do our tackling drill, because we kind of just do a quick tackling drill. We don't focus on it too much because honestly, at this age group, no one really is great at tackling. And as long as you're not afraid to get hit, it'll work.
Right.
I line him up. I'm like, hey, I know you might be a little nervous, but just run forward. This is how you tackle and get the first hit out of the way. And he cracked one of my better players. He ended up becoming our starting running back. And in the championship game, he rushed for like 300 yards and like 6 touchdowns.
Oh my God.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there are players that stand out.
That's awesome.
And you got to think too, like you're catching these kids like when they're going through puberty. So maybe some of these kids hit growth spurts. Maybe they don't. Like if a kid's really good and then he hits a growth spurt and all of a sudden he's like 6'1" or something like that.
It is funny coaching at this age group because of like that. Everyone's kind of going through puberty at their own speed. And I have some kids that like, I don't know, you would see them, and I'm not great at guessing kids' ages. I would see them like, I don't know, 9, 10. And then I have another, and they're small. And then like my defensive tackle is like 6'1", 180 pounds. I'm just like, damn, you guys are all the same age.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's just wild. That's so cool. What an interesting thing scheme-wise. Too.
Well, yeah, and I can understand a mom of a 10-year-old or 11-year-old walking up to a field and seeing a 6'1" kid and not being like, maybe I should wait a couple years before we do a little tackle football. But I also see the other side where you can starting them early and developing techniques is probably beneficial for the long run for player safety. So,
yeah, and we kind of have these open talks with parents in the area because flag football is becoming increasingly popular.
Yeah,
and I try and go to the flag. We have too many flag kids, and I'll go over and introduce myself and be like, if you're interested in tackle, talking to the parents, just come over and let me know. And they're always like, well, I was going to wait until they're like 13 or 14, right before they go to high school. And I'm like, that's too late. Like, they're going to waste their first year just trying to learn the sport. And by the time they get to high school, they're way behind the ball. 2 seasons ago for Crofton, we had this kid come try out his first year. He was a soccer player, one of the fastest kids I've ever seen. Like, we had fast kids on the team, and it wasn't even comparable. Like, he was just in a different league. And he plays for Spalding. He was a freshman at Spalding this year, and he's really good. He's like their starting kick returner. But his dad reached out to us this year and was like, man, I really wish I would have had him playing like 3-4 years earlier because he would just be unstoppable. And it's just like, yeah, but it is what it is. I don't fault the parents for wanting to, like protect their kid or whatever.
Right.
So
yeah, there's a safety element for that for sure. And then also it's interesting to see how other cultures deal with their sports, right? Like when I went over to Italy, you would see like 5, 6-year-old, 7-year-old kids playing organized games of soccer, just like in the street. They would create whatever they made and they were already rolling. And when they go into some of these youth academies, they're 8 or 9 years old. And it's like they had to build a base from 6, maybe even earlier, like 4 years old is when you can get into certain leagues over in Europe. And that's why we get smoked in soccer every year. It's wild. Let's talk about the AFC Championship game. Taylor, thank you so much. That was a great introduction. Yeah. And we're really happy to have you here on Squawk.
Definitely.
Thank you.
An 18-point deficit gets blown by the Kansas City Chiefs. Game at 2 halves, really. The first half, it looked like the Chiefs were just going to roll through them, right? First 3 possessions were touchdowns. The run game was working really well. And the Bengals just didn't have anything to answer with offensively. And then right before the first half ends, there's a snafu at the 1 yard line. They were at the 1 yard line with 5 seconds left. It looked like he was trying to call for a timeout that he didn't have. Like, it was just, what a shit show of a play. And I feel like that's when the momentum shifted. What do you guys think?
I mean, 21-3, that's a big deficit. But if you could get 24-3 or even score a touchdown, 28-3, I think most of us are like, game over. Because the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, they're always super aggressive. But that was just another play, and that was kind of the start of the downfall where Mahomes just wasn't looking right. Like, that check down that wasn't going to score. And of course, Eli Apple had to make the tackle, and I can't stand him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He lives on Twitter.
Yeah, he's getting the runs, not the runs. That sounds pretty diarrhea-ish, but people are attacking him on Twitter. If they come back and win, he's going to be chirping, and of course he was after the game on Twitter talking trash to Tyreek Hill.
Called Tyreek Hill a baby.
Yeah, he called him a baby cheetah. Yeah. Well, his handle is Cheetah. So the first game they had in week 16 or 17, same scenario where the Chiefs were up 21-3, and the second half, Burrow just went nuts, and they got all those big plays to chase, and they came back and won. So I was like, no way they do it again. Like, even going into the half and they didn't score, I was like, 21-3. There's no, like, Chiefs had a huge game the week before where they came back and forced overtime and then won it on their first opening drive. And you kind of alluded to it, Ben, in our previous podcast. It was like, are they going to choke, or is there too much pressure on them? And I was like, there's no way. Like, it's the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. But lo and behold, second half, man, they couldn't get anything going on offense. They didn't score up until the last field goal to go into overtime. I'm just like, I don't know what happened to them. And I remember that like busted screen pass to P. Ryan. I was like, how did that even happen? This old man rumbling down 40 yards or so. And I was like, is this going to, like, and at that point I was like, maybe they do have a chance to come back and win. And lo and behold, it happened. What do you think was the factor that switched? I mean, obviously the Chiefs couldn't get any offense going, but I guess Cincinnati's defensive game plan changed, or?
I'll tell you exactly what it was. Joe Burrow was sacked one time for 7-yard loss, and that was it.
Yeah.
The Cincinnati Bengals offensive line held up. We were talking last pod about how Burrow was the second most sacked quarterback. Taylor, you're a Titans fan. I think Tannehill was up there. I think
Tannehill was 2, and okay. Burrow was number 1, and he didn't even play the last game of the year.
Right. So the theme for the Bengals has been the offensive line has been terrible. So the Bengals sometimes find themselves in these third and long situations where, once you're in third and long and in a playoff game too, the pressure just adds that much more. They didn't really have that this game. They only sacked him once. Joe Burrow made one scramble where he looked like 2007 Eli in the Super Bowl where he ducked out of it. He ran to the left. A guy was on his heels.
Yep. He
misses. And then he ends up getting a huge gain. And I'm just staring at my computer screen and I'm like, the Bengals are going to the Super Bowl. Like if shit like this happens for them, it just seems like some of the things that they get into late in the game are so advantageous for them. The Tennessee game, they had the interception at the end of the game that flipped field position. It happened again in this game. The very last, I believe they were in overtime, Patrick Mahomes threw that pick. The Bengals got the ball back, and all they need to do is get Evan McPherson in range. And that's it. All the other things about that team work cohesively, except for the offensive line. But this was a game where he was only sacked once. They weren't facing these third and longs where sometimes their drives stall out. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before the game, I said my X factor was Chris Jones. I expected him to have a monster game, but I don't even know if he was the one who got the one sack. I don't think he was. I know the Titans, they got Burrow sacked 9 times, but the Titans do tons of stunts on their D-line where they're having guys twist around, and the Bengals guards are terrible and they don't move well. And if you do that, you can get one of your defensive ends in a straight sprint to Burrow. Chiefs, I didn't really see much of that. And what do they call him? Joe Shiesty or whatever. He doesn't panic. I like him, but he's getting to the point where he's a little too good to be in my conference, but he doesn't panic. He doesn't really show that he's like anxious or anything. And once they got into the second half and that P. Ryan touchdown, and when they started getting closer and closer, and I was just like, they're going to win this.
So I guess what it shows is like Mahomes is vulnerable, right? The days of Patrick Mahomes, everyone's saying, okay, well, I think can still go into most stadiums and put up 40 points. I'm not saying that this is like a knock on him. I don't view him any less as a quarterback, but I think if you have one of these guys, these Josh Allens, these Justin Herberts, these Lamar Jackson types, I think it's fair to say if you're going into a game, hey, like maybe unless the Chiefs can pick up a legit third option for their offense, maybe banking on Mahomes every single game is just not a realistic thing to do. He lost in the AFC Championship game. Go tell Jacksonville that the Chiefs are having issues. Go tell the Texans that the Chiefs are having issues. You know what I mean? It's like, but the standards are so high in Kansas City. I think maybe the pressure was on them, Chad, a little bit, to just go back to a third straight Super Bowl. I think that wears on teams, especially teams that maintain that cohesion, because guys it's hard going that deep in the playoffs every year, right?
I feel like if it wasn't for Tom Brady, like who cares? But Brady was going to the Super Bowl almost every other year for his career, basically. And the Patriots always had a great defense. It's really hard to, like, Peyton Manning killed teams in the regular season, had an okay defense for his whole career, but would go in the playoffs and go pretty deep and then lose. And it's because I don't care how good you are. If you're like, I need to win a 35-31 shootout, that's just unnecessary pressure. So I don't know. He did have a bad game, but he's had 6 of them in his whole career. So
I think they said that was the third worst performance he's ever had.
Yeah.
I think that was a stat on it just by statistics alone, which is crazy because he had a 91.3 passer rating. I mean, it's not like he played horrible. The first half sort of makes up for a lot of that. He was sacked 4 times for 39 yards too. So the Bengals were getting pressure. I mean, there were 2 of those plays, like we were talking about Taylor before the pod started. He held the ball for like 10 seconds. One was in the beginning of the fourth quarter, and the other, I think, was a little later in the fourth quarter when the game was really coming down to it. He ends up fumbling the ball on the second one. What was the deal? I mean, I know he's a gunslinger and everything. Is that just something that these young quarterbacks have? Because he's not the only one who does that. Lamar Jackson forces a lot of throws that he doesn't need to force a lot of the time. Justin Herbert forces a lot of throws. If you watch some of his film, is it just because these guys are like the new generation of gunslinger and they're just trying to make plays happen? Or is it bad decision-making? Like, what is it?
I'm not an NFL coach, so I don't know for sure, but I feel like a lot of these younger quarterbacks, when they're making their reads, hardly do they look like Tom Brady, Manning, Drew Brees. If their running back comes out of the backfield wide open, they don't hesitate. They just turn around and say, hey, give me that 5 yards. If you bust it, even better. But I'll take the 5 yards. I think a lot of the younger quarterbacks, they look for the bomb, and then they look for the check down. Well, they go for the deep bomb. Then maybe try and find their tight end in the middle. And then by that point, the check down is probably not even a check down anymore. Throwing the ball away to live another day is just not even in their head. So I think it's just that's the game now.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Scheme has something to do with it. But I feel like even 5 or 10 years ago, guys would be getting ripped for doing that sort of thing. You know what I mean? And Chad, I think when I see these guys play their best, it's when they take what the defense gives them. Sometimes, these offenses are so dynamic now. I mean, how many times, Chad, have we seen Jamar Chase fucking catch a ball that only travels probably 3 yards past the line of scrimmage? He makes a move, and then all of a sudden he's out the window. I don't know. Do you wish that is that a flaw is it a flaw in general, or is it just guys trying to make a play and trying to make something happen? And should they do that?
I mean, everything is getting bigger, faster, stronger. Every single quarter, even the quarterbacks that you don't think of that are Joe Burrow, I don't think of him as a mobile quarterback, but he's pretty fast. I'm sure if he ran a 40-yard dash, it would probably be a 4.6 or something. And if you go back 20 years, you'd be like, oh, this is the next Mike Vick. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess there's a point to that. Everybody is getting bigger, faster, and they're also getting more hype. I went on YouTube the other day. It's just a complete tangent. But if you go onto YouTube, look up high school footballers and see the videos that come up that have already like hundreds of thousands of views, millions of views for some of these guys. Like, it's crazy how exposure to the game has grown so much that some of these guys in high school are signing like they're already signing like shoe deals. And then with the changes in the college rules now, where they can make money off their likeness. I was on the Maryland store the other day and I saw like a Stephon Diggs jersey with his name on the back of it. And I'm like, I wonder if he gets a cut of that.
Right.
If they're selling his merch. Like, it's just crazy how football has evolved, like just in general with all the exposure and the growth in the sport. I think it's a great thing. The Bengals really impressed me defensively. They seem to get turnovers whenever they need one. It's just they're able to make something happen. Going into overtime with Patrick Mahomes winning the coin toss, I thought to myself, like, they showed some stat that said there's this crazy margin of victory for teams that win the coin toss first in the playoffs in overtime. They almost always win. The Bengals, now this is, again, twice in 1 week or twice in a row where they've gotten amazing turnovers that completely swing the game in the other direction. If they keep that up for the Super Bowl, do you think that they stand a good shot against the Rams? I do. I'm done doubt. If Joe Burrow can get sacked 9 times in a game by a very underrated pass rush, I thought. A lot of those guys, Taylor, I had never heard of. D'Amico Autry.
It's Tennessee. No one knows who they are.
Right. What's up with that? It's like they just don't give a shit. It's like down there in Nashville, they care about country music and having a good time. And football is just like an actor, which is crazy because there's a lot of good football history in Tennessee, it seems like.
The Titans are one of the only teams I know that consistently have players make the All-Pro team, but they don't go to the Pro Bowl.
That's funny.
Justin Simmons, second team All-Pro. He's going to the Pro Bowl because Chris Jones apparently got hurt after the Bengals game. 3 years ago, Kevin Byard, first team All-Pro, didn't go to the Pro Bowl. Deion Sanders actually referred to him as just as a fan on Twitter when they got into a little Twitter argument. Going back a little bit more, they're like when the Titans in the early 2000s, when their defense was a little like, they weren't the Ravens, but I think it was like Ravens, Titans are always in the early 2000s, are always good defense. They had players all the time that were like, oh, this is a guy's All-Pro, but not going to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, you wonder. Yeah, there are a few franchises that are like that. They're underseen. They don't get the TV time. So the masses don't get to see some of these players as much because, a lot of these primetime games, they're decided they know who they want to put on primetime games. So, and I imagine the team market for Nashville is pretty small compared to a lot of these teams. So their fan base might be a little bit smaller. So they're not getting the votes when it comes to the Pro Bowl. There's fan votes involved.
Yeah.
So you're not getting many fan votes for Tennessee players. And Henry's the outlier there because everybody knows who Henry is. Everybody knows who Henry is. Yeah. Everybody knows who Henry is.
So is that how small market teams just stand out? You need to have a guy, a superstar on your team. I guess that makes sense, right?
I think you need to have a superstar quarterback, really.
Yeah, true.
Derrick Henry's gotten away with it. Derrick Henry, it's actually, that's a good question for you as a Tennessee Titans fan. We were talking the last pod. Do you think the Titans should be in some of these talks for some of these quarterbacks that might be?
Well, did you see that Rodgers apparently is building a house in Nashville?
Bro, okay. Chad, what did I say last pod, dude? I said, imagine Aaron Rodgers with the Tennessee Titans offense, and just imagine that for a second.
So I don't hate Tannehill. Like, there's a lot of Titans fans that like trash him all the time, and I'm just like, he's not bad. I think our offensive coordinator should take most of the blame for this year because he's just real predictable. If the news broke as like Titans are trading Tannehill and a first-round pick, maybe a third to the Packers for Rodgers, I wouldn't be mad. I'd be like, okay, could you imagine Rodgers doing a play action to Derrick Henry? Like
Julio Jones is your number 2 if he sticks around. I don't know if
they can cut him or if he'll be healthy, but
yeah,
he's whatever. He's on the team. I'll take him as number 2. But Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he has Aaron Jones in Green Bay, and Aaron Jones is no slouch, but you give Aaron Rodgers, Derrick Henry in his backfield, even with a terrible receiving core, and he's going to tear some teams up.
Derrick Henry's he's the size of a bear with the grace of a deer, dude. It's fucking unreal to watch that guy run. It really is. It's crazy.
I think he's bigger than what he's listed as.
He looks fucking bigger. He looks like a refrigerator, dude. He's gigantic.
He's bigger than most of the offensive linemen on the team, isn't he? I wouldn't say
close.
Most, but he's close.
So he's back there.
For reference, I'm 6'3", 250-ish, and I've been within 5 feet of him, and he's way bigger than I am. So
that's crazy.
What is he listed at?
I think he's listed as like 6'3", 245 or something.
240. That guy's 245. He looks like he's 285. He looks like he could go into WrestleMania and fucking just dominate every single wrestler on the lineup. Like, he's unbelievable to watch play football. Him and I feel the same way when I watch Lamar Jackson play. He has something that no other quarterback really has in the league, and it's just. These guys are amazing to watch. And it's cool that with the AFC getting so quarterback-centric, young quarterback-centric, I mean, the fact that Derrick Henry has made a name for himself in a market where I guess people don't recognize the Tennessee, it just seems strange to me because for the last 3 years, they've been in the mix. And they made an AFC Championship game.
I try and go down to Nashville for a game once a year, and I don't really mind it because it has a laid-back vibe. It almost feels like a college atmosphere. Mm-hmm. If you go to any of the tailgates, you'll run into ex-Titans players that are just walking around drinking a beer, and you can just go and have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty cool.
Whatever. If the media doesn't like them, other than what's his name, Kyle Brandt on NFL Network, he loves the Titans, but other than that, no one seems to care.
Really?
Yeah, it's strange. I think it goes back to the size of the network. It's just it is what it is for certain teams in certain regions of the United States. If Green Bay didn't have the history that it did, I feel like Green Bay is a similar situation. Small town. Obviously, Nashville's bigger than Green Bay, but when it comes to market size, I imagine if they didn't have the early, Lombardi days, I mean, they've just been a thing for so long that they have a huge thing. But
I'll give you another team that's like that too, Seattle. I remember before Russell Wilson got there, and then after Russell Wilson got there, where Seahawks fans became absolutely insufferable. They were the Legion of Boom years. I was up there.
Yeah,
they were insufferable. There. I was like, wow, these are the worst fans in the NFL. And I cannot believe that it's from Seattle. They've mellowed out since then, very much so. And their organization might be in flux this year as well. So I don't know if Russell Wilson's leaving or if Pete Carroll is leaving. I think it's going to be Russell Wilson because Pete Carroll just signed a contract extensions.
So the X factor was the franchise quarterback. Which brought that, So
100%. Well, that, and I think you had at that time the Legion of Boom was there, and Marshawn Lynch was there. So you had all these other. They kind of got everything came together all at once, very quickly. But Russell Wilson was the tipping point for that.
Yep.
They had Tavares Jackson as their starting quarterback there in 2010. I mean, it was dire. It wasn't just rainy weather-wise. It was rainy football-wise, too. So I guess we got to talk about Joe Burrow going to the Super Bowl because, that's what's actually happening in this reality, unfortunately. I guess there's a schism between Ravens fans where there's half of the people just say, look, if you're in the AFC North and you aren't the Baltimore Ravens, if you're in the Super Bowl, I hope that lightning comes down and strikes the team bus before you even get there. We would never in a million years root for them, right? And then there are the other people who are they're Joe Burrow fans, and they kind of watch this guy, and he seems to be the second coming when it comes to the quarterback position. I mean, really, his story, winning the national championship after getting basically transferred out of Ohio State, goes to LSU, wins a national title there. First year with the Bengals wasn't really a year at all. His leg had to get reconstructed because he was getting destroyed behind his offensive line last year. And now look at him. He's in the fucking title game. Chad, where do you stand on this? Like, it physically makes me ill that I have to watch orange and black striped uniforms take the field at SoFi Stadium for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it? Because it disgusts me
personally. Dude, I'm doing my little genie future psychic stuff, and all I see from now on in future media, social media, whatever, is Joe Burrow made it to the Super Bowl before Lamar Jackson. It sucks, man. Like, the only silver lining that I have is that Lamar is younger than Joe still, even though he has 2 more years of experience. The fact that the Cincinnati Bengals are now the top in our division and they're going to be considered the top in the conference, and Lamar had a horrible, like the fact that our whole team had like a horrible year when it came to injuries, and then we missed Lamar the last 4 or 5 games. They took advantage of that situation, obviously, in the division, took the division lead, won the division. They catapulted themselves to where they are now. And I'm just like, I can't root for them. I can't. As a Raven, I can't root for someone that's in our division. The same would be for Steelers, obviously, and Cleveland.
The Lamar Jackson talk is just seems silly, right? Like there's a lot of things going on with the Baltimore Ravens that are a lot more than Lamar Jackson. I invite you to take a look at the record of the Baltimore Ravens when Lamar Jackson was a starter, and then take a look at the Ravens record when he was not a starter, and tell me that he doesn't have some sort of influence on that team and that he can't play. He answered a lot of questions early this year, but there's a lot of things that work against the Ravens. I think Greg Roman's schemes are fucking terrible. I'm not a scheme guy. I am not a coach. I'm not, but when I see 4 wide receivers in a mesh and they're all meeting in the center of the field, I find that would be a very hard area to throw the ball to. And those windows are going to be pretty tight. And that's the kind of shit that goes on with the Ravens offense. So the idea that there's a lot of things at play with the Ravens. The idea that people are going to compare Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, things need to change in Baltimore for us to be able to make those kinds of comparisons. But Taylor, you're a Tennessee fan. Like we're talking about it from an AFC North perspective. Do you have any feelings towards Joe Burrow making the Super Bowl?
So, I mean, I'm rooting for the Rams because I want Stafford I've always been a Stafford guy, and people are always like, oh, he's a stat chaser. He never does anything else. I'm like, well, he's on the Lions. What do you expect? So I would like to see Stafford get his ring. I am a Burrow fan. So last year, before he blew out his knee, the Bengals beat the Titans, and he was putting on a masterclass of just dropping dimes. And I was just like, I feel like I'm watching Peyton Manning beat up my team. And this was rookie year. Earlier, I think Chad had brought up like the Titans with Andrew Luck. I don't know if you guys knew this, but the Titans never beat Andrew Luck in his career.
We had a conversation about this. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago, Chad, where we were like, Andrew Luck retiring is one of the most seismic shifts in football of the past 10 years, right?
Yeah.
It changed the AFC South. I mean, it really did. Like the Colts have been looking for a replacement ever since.
Yeah, they had the 1 year where Peyton Manning left, and then they got Luck, and then they were at the top of the division again until he retired. And then that's when you saw, no offense, Taylor, but then that's when Tennessee started winning the division, is when Andrew Luck. Yeah.
He never beat him, so I needed him to leave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I mean, that's ridiculous. I think he was like 14-0 all time against the Titans.
I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
That's absurd. I didn't realize that either.
If you look at their careers, I mean, Burrow and Andrew Luck, super talented quarterbacks, terrible O-lines. I think people are kind of brushing off the amount of hits Burrow takes because they're going to a Super Bowl in a second year, and they're like, he doesn't care. His body does. Like, Andrew Luck retired, and he said he just didn't like being hurt all year round, 24/7, and it wasn't worth it anymore.
Yeah.
If Burrow's averaging 60 sacks a year, if you can't keep that up, he'll be done soon if they don't get that fixed.
Yeah, that's a good point. Probably the main reason why Luck retired. He was one of the highest sacked quarterbacks during his.
And he was going into like his 6th surgery, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was injured a lot for random little things, and he was approaching a ridiculous amount of surgeries. And I think he took a step back and he was like, "Wait a minute, I'm 29 years old, and I'm going to the hospital again."
Right.
I got a degree from fucking Stanford. Like,
right.
I'm pretty sure I could stop playing football and land on my feet somewhere. And it's crazy because we haven't heard a peep from Andrew Luck for the most part. I mean, I think he's coming back a little bit more. I saw him on TV.
He was on something. Was it for like the national championship game or something?
He was him and
Robert Griffin III.
Him and RG3. Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, he's coming back in some ways, but like for the most part, it's just been he retired and then that was it. But the AFC South completely changed after that. I could argue once he decided to hang him up, and the AFC in general.
I don't want to say it as a Titans fan, but it was kind of the perfect storm. The Titans were steadily building, got Vrabel, who I think is a really good coach. Andrew Luck retires. The Jacksonville Jaguars had that 1 year where everything worked, and then it fell apart so fast. And then Bill O'Brien just, I don't know, someone like dared him to like destroy an NFL team as fast as he could. I don't know what he was thinking, but he ruined the Texans, and then Deshaun Watson scandal is still going on. So, I mean, hey, you got to play your schedule, but I don't know. I was going to say Trevor Lawrence, but Urban kind of ruined that.
Yeah.
What a fucking shit show that was this year. Oh my gosh. I could not imagine being like, all right, yeah, we just took an L. All right, guys, I'm going to hang out and go see my grandkids. Since I'm here, I'm in town. I might as well do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That is wild to me. And I guess what pisses me off about that is like there are 32 positions that are available in the NFL to be a head coach, right? And you're telling me that Urban Meyer can just go into an NFL job. He's the classic definition of a guy who would do great in college because he has full control over everything. But as soon as you get him into the room with the big boys, it's like, and people who are professionals at this and aren't just going to take your shit, you got to adjust to that. And he never did. And I just that might be the biggest coaching failure of all time, right? Yeah. What's worse than that?
Especially when you put it that they had the number 1 pick. Mm-hmm. It was no secret they were getting Trevor Lawrence. So you probably want to pair up your franchise quarterback with hopefully a coach that'll be with him his whole career. The whole thing was weird because then they drafted Travis Etienne in the 2nd round when they already had a decent
James Robinson.
James Robinson had a great year his rookie year, so you got an established running back. There was tons of talent on the board, and they're like, "Well, we're going to take another running back."
Yeah,
and the season was a disaster
for sure. Yeah, AFC South talk for you, folks.
Yeah.
We get it on this podcast too.
Yeah,
we're a well-rounded organization around here. Yeah, honestly, I'm ready to find like random fans from random fan bases. Speaking of which, news stuff. There's a brand new NFL team, guys. The Washington Commanders.
Commanders, yep.
What do we think of that name?
I think the jerseys look pretty cool, but I
like the jerseys.
Yeah. The red wolves would have been cool. Keep the red until they get rid of Dan Snyder, which is hard to do. Getting rid of a owner. I don't have any respect for that organization. Ever since they gave Hainsworth a $100 million contract, I was just like, stolen for your Titans. I was like, this organization is just trash. The fact that they have Commanders, which I think I've seen a lot of on social media, a lot of people kind of dogging it. I was like, that just is typical for the Washington football team's organization to kind of blow that, the rebranding of a team. It seems like the fan base isn't like on board with it. So
and there's been so much buildup for it. You know what I mean? They've been the Washington football team now for 2 years.
Yeah, they should have just kept that if they went for Commanders, in my opinion.
I kind of liked the Washington football team.
Yeah.
It's different. It's very straight to the point. I know you have a branding issue, and I get all that. But it kind of reminded me of like the Premier League teams or something over in Europe for soccer, like your something FC or whatever. In this case, it was WFT, the Washington Football Team. It was kind of cool. They have a lot of other things to figure out though before we like get real hyped about their name. They have poop pipes breaking in their stadiums, and they have railing collapses and stuff like that. FedEx Field might be the worst field in the NFL.
It probably is, and it's a shame because it's also one of the bigger stadiums, but it's a disaster. Dan Snyder, I think, had another sexual harassment charge come out today too.
The day after the name change?
Yeah.
Horrible.
And the whole name change I thought was kind of like, I don't mind the Commanders. I think sticking with the W is a little stupid. You had 2 years to design a logo.
Yeah.
But my whole thing was a couple of weeks ago, people were all posting on social media the URL like WashingtonCommanders.com, and it looks like an official website, and it got dropped soon after. So I was like, okay. Then Joe Theismann on the radio on Saturday and said the name was going to be Washington Commanders. And then I think Sunday or Monday, a news helicopter flying around the team facility zoomed in through a window and showed all the like Commanders jerseys.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I saw that too. That's crazy.
Nothing is sacred anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if you can find an edge and you can find a story somewhere, people will take it. Like Tom Brady's retirement. Apparently, the first time they announced it, it wasn't totally official. And Brady was like, well, I'm still thinking about it. And then basically he was like, yeah, well, I'm retired, I guess, 3 days later. So anything to get a story or a scoop, I guess. I don't know. They have so many things. I like that team too, the Washington Football Team. They've got a lot of little pieces that I like, but they just can never seem to get their shit together. And they're in quarterback limbo.
Yeah, I don't say they need a quarterback, and I don't know if Rivera is running the defense, but they need a better coordinator because they have too much talent to be.
Agreed.
The drop off from last year to this year was bad.
That was very surprising. That drop off.
Yeah,
was
agreed.
Crazy.
And it's funny because the Ravens are making some moves on the defensive side of the ball. They're being super aggressive about changing up their defense this year. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. The NFL landscape, I think, is going to change. There are a lot of quarterbacks where we have absolutely no idea where they're going to go, right? Like Baker Mayfield, there's no guarantee. I think they bring him back, but there's no guarantee with that. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be on the move. Aaron Rodgers, I doubt it, but he might be on the move. Russell Wilson seems like he's going to be on the move.
Who knows about the Deshaun Watson thing?
Yeah, is that, I don't know. Why have they not, I don't know what the timeline is for the Deshaun Watson stuff, but like, does anyone have any updates? That seems to be a story that I thought was going to be a lot bigger than what it ended up being. Like, does he have a court date set?
I think they're waiting for like an official court date, which is why I've been saying, who knows if he's like, he's like a little weirdo or not with the massage stuff, and it's probably bad to say, but he could have just settled with all the women for pocket change because he's signed that huge contract and been playing. And I get it. He wants to, if he really is innocent and he wants to just completely, without a shadow of a doubt, prove it, go to court. But I don't think he's going to play until it gets settled. And it has, like you just said, it hasn't moved in quite some time.
Yeah. That's a tough balance. I hope, I know I'll never have to go through because I'm not, a big name. And I'm not complaining. Obviously I don't know whose side is right. And I hope whoever's innocent or whoever's guilty is proved. Like, I hope justice, finds a way to actually get this figured out. And I hope if the girls if they're actually if they're telling the truth, I hope they get their day in court and whatnot. But it's
something was going on.
Yeah. You got that many women saying something that you're doing. I've read some of the stories, and I don't know. It's tough.
There were some text messages that got released, and I guess who knows if they're real, but they definitely made it like you're like, this wording does seem a little bit suspect. But
Yeah, and there are women that have come out and said that he's not like that at all, and that they've never had an interaction with him that was in that nature. So, like, and this is a question, Taylor, like you've been saying that it's been going on at least since the preseason last year. If this all started because he wanted a trade, right? Yeah. He wanted to get out of there, and they basically said no. And then it was crazy. Like a couple months later, this stuff started happening. And my trying to make ties to that.
My conspiracy brain was going.
Me too.
I was like, what's going on?
On this is fucking weird, right? Yeah. Like he was going to sit out the season.
Yep.
Essentially, and he had all this leverage for some reason. I don't know why. But then when this stuff broke, all of his leverage went away because other teams were like, we're not going to go and take a flyer on this guy if he is having legal issues. And then we're not going to have a quarterback anyway.
Yeah.
And with the way the court case is going, it's this long, dragged out thing. I think it's done more damage. I think you're right. Maybe he should have settled. I don't know. Maybe nothing genuinely happened, and maybe he thinks he's got a shot at court. But with this whole thing going on for as long as it has, what's the benefit for Deshaun Watson? You're going to sit another year, maybe? Like, because we've heard nothing about this story since they said, oh, they're setting a court date. It's now February of 2022. There's been no movement on this, right? Yeah. Unless I'm missing something. I don't think I am.
I think right now they're just waiting for a court date, and I don't know what level it's at, but they just said it's going to take time. My other thing was the Texans probably, I don't know. If I'm the Texans, I know they were like, oh, he's a franchise quarterback. We don't want to, they're so hard to get, but they were trying to trade him. And then I kept hearing all the rumors where they were asking for like 3 firsts and then 2 to 3 players. I'm like, no player is worth that. Like,
no.
Yeah.
And then he has all that baggage that is going to come with him. Like,
you're not going to get 3 first-round picks with all that baggage for someone. Like the other team doesn't even know when they can play the guy, because once the legal situation is set in stone, like whether he's found guilty or not, determines if the NFL suspends him. Like that's still a whole nother factor. It's too much up in the air for any team to even, in my opinion, to even take the risk.
I mean, yeah, if let's say he is found guilty, does he play again?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like I'm sure there's been players that have had sexual harassment issues, but he had at one point it was like 20 women. Like,
yeah, exactly.
If you're Roger Goodell, you just be like, and he is guilty, you're just like, sorry, you can go play somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
And we know how, especially as Ravens fans, like Roger Goodell is not necessarily the best arbiter when it comes to certain decisions, right? Like a lot of people think that he bungled the Ray Rice stuff.
Oh, he did.
He should have been on top of that. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. Every time there seems to be a case like this that comes up, Roger Goodell now has to go through, because he's the guy that answers the mail and all this stuff. He's going to have to go through and figure out a punishment for this. I don't know what the punishment would be, or if there would be a suspension. I imagine there would be, but like, I just don't see this being something that you sit out. He's going into the prime of his career. Why are you wasting prime years of your career? Unless maybe he is, but it seems like with some of these text messages and the exchanges that were going on with some of these women, it seems apparent that something was going on, but like, I don't know. Is it worth sitting out football for?
Yeah. Because I mean,
I guess it is, right?
Technically he could have played all year if he just wasn't, he obviously, like you said, before the scandal, he said he's not going to play for Houston Texans ever again. So stood, I mean, he's obviously stood strong. He didn't play all season. And if this bleeds into next season where the court stuff isn't settled and he's still technically on the roster, does he go a whole nother year without playing again?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, he is young and quarterbacks can, play longer. They're one of the longer tenured positions in the NFL. You can play into your 40s. Does he make it into the 40s? Who knows? But he can play well into his 30s, and so that's still another 10 plus years that he can play. So
yeah, he'll be 27 at the start of this year.
Yeah, so
7.
So
All right. So here's a question I have for you then, Taylor. If you were to trade Tannehill and you were to look at one of these quarterbacks, you can't pick Aaron Rodgers. Which one would you pick? Who are you taking a flyer on?
Like, so we're talking about the quarterbacks that.
So here's what I think. Like Jimmy Garoppolo is out there. Yeah.
No. I think Tannehill's better than Garoppolo.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would just keep Tannehill there. I mean,
Tannehill scored 26 total touchdowns this year. I don't think Garoppolo did that.
How many of them were the rushing variety? Because I probably tuned him out. I can't stand Tannehill's touchdown celebration.
I saw that on your guys' one show. You don't like the finger roll.
I can't stand it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it bothers me so much. It's just, I can't stand it.
Well, so usually a lot of his, I think he had 6 or 7 rushing touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
For the most part, his rushing touchdowns are usually pretty cool plays. Like he had like the 50-yard touchdown run against the Packers last year. He's had a few where he comes around the edge and he like runs over defensive end. And so I get the hype, but my only concern is he doesn't always land properly when he does his jump. And there's been a couple times where he's like landed and kind of limped away. And I was like, ooh.
It's not even good for him. So why is he doing it? He could retire it. He could do literally anything else. And I don't think I'd have a problem with Ryan Tannehill at all. I have like unbridled rage for him just because of his touchdown celebration. It's so petty on my part.
Well, I'm also not the biggest fan of like quarterbacks, like for the most part celebrating. Like I hated Cam Newton's Superman thing. Like when Lamar did the flip into the end zone this year, I was just like, just score your touchdown, hand the ball away.
And it looked like it hurt. Like,
well, there was a report that he like didn't practice a couple days that week because his back was tight. I'm just like,
his hip was sore, right?
You're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Just score, maybe give a little Tiger Woods like fist bump. I don't know.
Great. Over under on how many times Tony Romo, if he's doing a game, over under on how many times he say, "Oh wow, the Commanders have a commanding lead over the so-and-so." My over-under is probably like 2 or 3 a game for Tony Romo. I don't know about this, but like every time I see him when he does a broadcast for a game I'm watching, I get happy. I like Tony Romo in the broadcast booth. He's awesome.
Yeah. He's pretty good. There's some games where he gets on my nerves, but overall he's a good broadcaster. Greg Olson's not that bad either.
It's great. It's great to have that experience. You know, someone who can actually tell you what's going on, like based on what he's seeing from his experience as a quarterback in NFL. He's great at calling plays and telling you describing what's going on. So that's why I like listening to him.
And Troy Aikman's gotten kind of crotchety in his old age.
So it's funny you said that because I'm starting to like Troy Aikman.
What?
Because I think, like you just said, he's getting older and he kind of just says whatever he wants. And like, it kind of comes off like, I guess, a little rude or whatever, but I'm like, yeah, it's true. But for the longest time, I hated him and Joe Buck. I was like, oh, great. Aikman and Joe Buck. And it was always Cowboys games. I'm like, I wonder who they're going to be rooting for.
Right.
But now that he's getting older and I guess he's just the disappointment of the Cowboys because their team's been quite loaded for some time. I love it. He just always has negative stuff to say now.
I thought you were going to say, well, you know, he's older and I'm getting older too. And, you know, fuck it. I've just hit the age where Troy Aikman's my guy. Like, why not? It's funny you say that because he did a playoff game. It was in the wild card. He wanted to do the Dallas, San Francisco game.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's the game that we should be broadcasting on, but, you know, we've got this one instead. And I was like, damn, Troy Aikman.
They gave it to Tony Romo.
Broadcast where they put you, okay? Yeah. You've been there a while, but, I mean, give me a break. Like, your counterpart, Joe Buck, at any given time, he'll do the World Series. He'll do hockey. He'll do football. Like, I don't want to hear it from you, Troy. You do one sport. And your counterpart, Joe Buck over there, who people have feelings about as well. At least he, you know, bounces around all over the place. He's got a right to complain. But so really, Tony Romo gets on your nerves. I love
sometimes it's just sometimes I feel like he takes away from the game. Like just like with the Manning cast, I like that, but I only watch it if they're covering a game that I don't think I care about. Because I'll get to a point where I'll be like, oh, I'm watching Peyton and Eli and their guests. And I'm like, oh, wait, we're in the third quarter already or something.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to bring that back.
Well,
Command and cast.
Yeah, I don't know what the views they got. I
Yeah.
don't know if they were killing it with views. I know they dropped a couple curse words on live television. But I usually watch it after the game, like the next morning. I would watch the recap, and I like them. They're funny guys. Like
it just distracts me too much from actually watching the game personally.
Yeah, I think so
But
too.
they definitely have great conversations and they're funny. So
they're good with their own show. Like Peyton's Places, I have ESPN Plus, so I watch like Peyton's Places and Eli's Places, and they talk about football's history and stuff like that. That's where they're in their they're in their element in that, and they're going to make $1 billion after. Same with Brady. Brady's going to make like $1 billion now that he doesn't have to worry about football anymore, and he's got all these endorsement deals. Like, he's going to be a billionaire probably before we know it.
I think they were talking about very soon he'll be a billionaire, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and with his pedigree and his clout, if he does more of these commercials and maybe he does something with the NFL that's not like game day stuff. Like I could see a Tom Brady show like Peyton's Places or something like that. But I don't know. His family, I think they finally got him back after had the second wife, which is all the Super Bowls he's been to. I think now Giselle's got control over that. We were talking about her being a witch a couple podcasts ago, Chad. Yeah. I was talking to Aubrey about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, if you go down a rabbit hole with Gisele Bundchen online. There's some stuff in there that's just like it's weird. It's weird mojo, weird juju."
And when did they start? At what point in Tom Brady's career did he meet her?
He was young. He was like 25, 26.
So he already had a Super Bowl under his belt or two?
I think so.
If it was before the Tuck rule play against the Raiders, then I blame Giselle's witchcraft for his success.
No, yeah, see,
I think it was after that. Yeah.
Yeah, he met her when I think he was like 25 or something. But this isn't the Tom Brady podcast. Oh my gosh. Like the guy retired. Can we just give it a rest already?
Hey, he's the greatest
young crop of let Lamar Jackson take over. That's what Brady said, right? He was like, Lamar Jackson, you're next.
Yeah, he did say that. But he you know what he really meant was you're next on have to deal with Antonio Brown is what he meant by that.
That's a good point. What would you guys do if the Ravens brought him on?
I would, first of all, they would never do that. And if they did, I would disown the Ravens organization.
What if Lamar says I won't sign an extension until you guys bring in Antonio Brown?
He doesn't have that kind of leverage.
That's not a big deal. That's when water gets poured on me and I wake up in my bed and I'm like, whoa, geez, that was a reality I didn't want to be in. What a nightmare that was. The guy walked. No way he's going to the Ravens.
The guy walked off the field when his quarterback was. I mean, I assume it was in protest to the coaching staff.
He sabotaged their playoff chances.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, basically. Everyone was saying, what does it say about Tomlin that he like kind of controlled Antonio Brown for what was it, 8 years or whatever?
Who did? Tomlin?
Oh, Tomlin.
Yeah, Tomlin. And then as soon as he leaves the Steelers, it's like he can't stay anywhere. And then Brady kind of had him on like under his control for last year, and he got his ring and back to his old antics.
Yeah, it's wild.
And if he gets back into the league, I'd be shocked.
Me too.
The Ravens are not. Why in the world would the Ravens pick this guy up? We have one Brown already that I'm slightly disappointed in. Why would I want another one to add to, and then it's like, okay, cool, he's playing with his cousin. We have to decide whether or not we're going to pay Marquise Brown $13 million.
Yeah.
And we talked about it on this pod, and we say there's no fucking way that happens.
I wouldn't. What did he drop, like 7 touchdowns this year?
At
least 3 in the Lions game.
He's a zone receiver, man. He's great in zone. But if you get him matched up in man coverage, I've said this a billion times, and I will continue to say it because he just keeps showing evidence of it. If you get him in man coverage, he will never go up for contested balls. He'll never do any of that stuff. He drops it. His hands are inconsistent. And we got to figure out whether we're going to pay $13 million for him when we're already sort of cap strapped. We don't have a whole lot of cap space.
Yeah,
and that's what's scary about the Bengals too. They're like in the bottom. They're in the top 5 when it comes to cap space. They still sign guys.
I was looking at this real quick. The Bengals have like $65 million in cap space, and if they cut Trey Waynes, who didn't do anything for them this year, and one other guy, they'll have like $90 million in cap space next year, potentially coming off a Super Bowl victory.
And they're going to win the damn Super Bowl.
Don't say that.
I've been picking against them this whole playoff run, and I'm wrong every time. So now I'm going to try to do reverse psychology, and I'm going to say they're going to win, and then they're going to have potentially a chance to have $90 million in cap space after winning the Super Bowl. They're just going to build a huge dynasty team around.
Whoa. I don't say things you're going to regret. Okay, don't say things you're going to regret.
Hey, I'm jinxing it, man. I'm trying to do the jinx. I'm trying to do a Giselle Richcraft thing here. So
it won't work. Yeah, Joe Burrow's here. It's inevitable. Taylor, hey man, this was so much fun, dude. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have you on a lot more. That is going to happen. And then maybe we could get you on a Tennessee Titans podcast.
Maybe
that would be very interesting. You said that not a whole lot of people talk about him, so why don't we fucking talk about him?
Not too many. There's a few, but not a lot.
Yeah. Hey man,
let me know.
I'm glad. I want to say thanks for joining us, Taylor. Also, because you know more about the X's and O's of football, and you're very knowledgeable when it comes to college players as well. So I felt like you'd be a great person to have on as a guest, and I'm looking forward to what your brother and RJ put together. That'll be fun, and the collaborative opportunities down the road would be awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's exciting.
100%.
I gotta find some way to put all this useless football knowledge to use.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I feel too. This has been a good platform and a good outlet to do that for sure.
I'm really looking forward to the draft time, because I know we can have some great conversations.
Yeah, I think we should do a draft show. We should get it organized and set up.
Yeah.
I got your number, so we'll figure something out for that. I want to thank our new subscriber. We picked up another one over the weekend. Thank you so much for subscribing to Squawk. You can check out our other stuff on Twitter. It is #Flock_Squawk, and we're on TikTok as well at Flock Squawk Podcast, where I will be posting some things. Chad, Taylor, it was great talking to you. And you don't have to do this because, you're a Titans fan, but I'm going to do it. Call, ladies and gentlemen. You all have a good rest of your weekend, and we will see you to review the Super Bowl that's coming up in 2 weeks. So we'll see you all then. You all have a great weekend, and call.